Huh. I can't tell if you can see me. Can you see me? Oh, now I can see. Now I can see. Okay, sorry about that. I always seem to have a little bit of great. I always seem to have a little bit of a learning curve every time I do this. Someday I will figure it out, and that just means I need to do it more often, I think. Hi, everybody. Oh, thank you for being here. In the chat, tell us where you're from, how you know me, if you're new to me, if you're new to Procreate, and make sure you get those brushes. So in the description, I have the brushes as the freebie, the download. Let me see if I can find it here on my page. So you'll see the, I think this is going to be too hard to get to. It is the potpourri, Procreate potpourri. Oh, and I see Zoom is not, or it's not even Zoom, it's OBS. Okay, I just showed you the password. So this is the freebie set that you need. And isn't this snail so cute? All right, so it's kind of weird that I'm talking to myself, I have to admit. I am used to doing lives that are on Zoom, and I can talk with people and you guys can talk back. But I can see the chat. There is probably a delay, and I am going to try to keep track of it to make sure that I'm seeing any questions. So please make sure you put questions in there, and then I will scroll through. If I end up missing your question, make sure you maybe ask again if it's looking like I'm ending it or moving on when I need to pause. And Sheila, yes, this is being recorded and it will be here on YouTube when it's over. So definitely. So that's good to know for anybody who might feel like they can't follow along as quickly as I go. I am going to focus on this being more for beginners, and we're going to start from a blank canvas. So I hope you are feeling good about your sketching today, and I think you're going to be able to do this. What we might end up sort of doing part of, and then you can finish on your own time, is like the color on the shell. You know, I'll show you kind of get started on it and show you how to go about it, and then maybe not every single flower as well, but for the most part we're going to get all of this done today. There is not a color palette. I am going to show you as I go along. I feel like I gave away this color palette at some point. I just don't remember where. And I don't think it's in the freebies, in my newsletter freebies, but I give away so many things in my membership and in my freebies, my newsletter freebies, and it's kind of hard to keep track of. All right, let's get started. It is 10:05, so hopefully everybody's here that wants to be here. And I'm gonna go ahead and start a blank canvas. So if you're brand new, because this is a raster program and it pixelates if you try to print really big, then you know you need to start big. So you need to start with a bigger canvas so that you can print big if you want to print big. Hi from the Netherlands. And you can for if you're just kind of practicing today, it just really doesn't matter what size your canvas is. So I think I'm gonna make an 8x10 canvas, and that's inches. I know, you know, whatever you're used to making, let's say in your country, whatever dimensions you use, go with a pretty common print size. 8x10 is like some of the stuff behind me here, and I don't typically print much bigger than that. Sometimes I go to 11x14. Excuse me. Oh, I need to move my mouse out of the way because I keep grabbing it instead of this. All right, so I am going to make an 8x10 canvas and also turn my thing to light mode in a second here. So tap the plus sign, and the plus sign again if you don't already have one here. If you already have created a good canvas size for yourself, just tap that one. I go to inches, and then for width, I'm going to do 10. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be in that landscape. It can be portrait. Maybe you want tall flowers hovering over the snail. So maybe make it in the portrait instead of landscape. And for height, I'm going to do 8. So I always do 300 dpi. And then I always do this color profile. This is great for printing, even though it's not CMYK. And Display P3 is great for just posting online, just viewing, mostly viewing on Apple products. And tap Create. And then I am going to switch to light mode because I think the cameras do a better job with that. Oh, now I'm going to scooch. I need to scooch this, and that means I need to scooch this. I'm a little too far away from my iPad here. And my art member Camille in France, I don't see her here right now, but she pointed out long ago that it's nice to have some room down here for captions later when people want to have captions or translations down there. So let me know if you can't see my whole screen. I think you can. Hi, Gabby. Gabby is one of my biggest cheerleaders, and she loves color, so I'm sure she's going to love this snail. All right, let's go to the Procreate Potpourri set, and I am going to just stick with a pencil for sketching, any pencil. I'm always drawn to this giant pencil, and just any size that you like to sketch with, and any color that you like to sketch with. Since it's just a sketch for now, you can just make it quite big, and you can decrease it later because the sketch will not be in the final illustration. So let's make a rough circle. Really rough circle and kind of big. This is going to be our snail shell. And then from the bottom of this circle, I'm going to come up a little bit over here. So I'm not straight across, I'm up a little bit, and I'm going to make a little bit of a curve out here, and then this tangent that comes down here. That's our really rough initial size here, or snail shell here. For the eraser, I like the big wide soft pencil for erasing, and I like to make it big. And I am going to erase this little section here. Can you start to see your snail? All right, now I am making a spiral, and I don't know why I struggle with spirals so much, but I do. And I want it to just be, this is my widest point, so this little jet out that we had here, this is going to start going up, and the distance between this outer side and the spiral is going to get narrower and narrower. So you can see it's widest here and it's getting narrower, and just kind of, whoops, come in, something like that. You can make it spiral as many times as you want. It's going to be a little trickier to get those blobs of color on later if you make this too skinny. So think about that. And I've been, when I practice this, I've been making a little bit of a rim down here, just kind of a, I don't know. I don't think it's necessary, but I've been doing that. All right, so we have our snail shell, and you can see this curve. I'm gonna make some curves that kind of go almost straight across, but curved. So try not to make them too like that, right? Think about going straight across, but curve. Curve. And these are just to help you later. And down here, I switch my curve. So I go back the other way, but you don't have to. Those are just for a little bit later when we're adding some shadows to our shell. And it gives that rounded look. So the little foot of our snail, I can already tell this is going to be pretty big. So I'm going to tap my little arrow and move over here. And the little foot, I'm just coming down a little bit from the bottom. This is really, everybody's is going to look a little bit different because you are all going to have your own preferences for, you know, how thick this body part should be. But I'm kind of making a wavy line down here. And then somewhere down here near the bottom of this curve, I'm gonna make a little angled line there to decide how I want that little, I don't think it's called a tail, whatever that's called, the end of that snail foot to look. And this part we're gonna focus on in a minute. First, we're gonna come up here to the head. So do you want yours to have that more of a cute look, like a really big head compared to the rest of the snail? Think about that. And I'm just going kind of straight up, kind of pretending like my snail neck. Oops, I'm on the eraser. If you kind of, I don't know if it's called a neck either. I don't know the parts of a snail so well. But if you have kind of a neck area coming up, where do you want your head? And I've been making this a little squashed circle shape. You can make it very, very round if you want. And I have also been curving this part in and then back out here. I made one where it was really just facing us and another one where it was sort of facing 3/4 this way. So that's another thing to think about. Maybe if you want it to not face the viewer, you might have a little bit less of the head back there and a little bit more up here. And we're making eyes on a face like a kawaii, is that how you say it? Or, you know, I know snails don't have eyes right on their heads like this, but this is just our imagination. So now let's do our little antenna. I've just been doing a little swoop, like just little angles, thinking about aliens. You can make them smaller, bigger. If this one is kind of looking off to the side a little bit, you might want to grab it and move it down a little, and then maybe erase this part. And then that one you would be able to see the head right there, and that one would be kind of off to the side. It would actually probably look a little smaller than that too. So I just grabbed it with my freehand tool and moved it down. Since it's our sketch, we can really play around with it. And I guess we're gonna go ahead and go with the looking off to the side. So with the eyes, I'm gonna put one way over here and one a little lower over here. And I'm making a cute little smile like this. Already so cute and a little alien-like. So for this little curve down here, draw yourself maybe a 45-degree angle right here. And then let's curve this over to connect. And then we're gonna make this kind of go up and down a little bit. Just a little curve in there. And I was showing some of the green up this neck a bit. So I'm going to indicate where I want that green to be. And I'm going to have this kind of come down like this. So this is going to be sort of the neutral color, whatever beigey color you want to choose. And then this part is going to be my green. Now's a good time to decide, do I want this shell to be a little bit lower over here? I could also, here's one thing I like to do when I'm sketching if I don't want to erase and move things. I like to go to liquify. So if you go to the adjustments menu, liquify, and on push, I keep momentum and distortion off, pressure up, and then just kind of pick a small size where you can kind of make adjustments. So I might move this around a little bit, move the neck in a little bit, maybe the face out a little bit. And I think I might move this whole part of the shell down a little bit. Just little things like that. Because it's just my sketch, it really doesn't matter. All right, this is dominating my screen. Oh, I see when I'm looking up at my computer, I see this is kind of high up here too, so I might fix that later. I could use liquify on that too. I'm going to make my snail smaller. So since it's all on one layer, I'm going to grab the whole thing just by tapping the arrow, and with uniform on, and by the way, I always keep things on bicubic down here, and once you set it, it should stay till you change it another time. It'll change uniformly with uniform on, and I'm going to just kind of think about where I want this on my page. How many flowers am I putting on here? Am I going to have some text up here? Is it going to become a greeting card or something like that? You can think about where you want that now that you're sort of done with the sketch part. And then on your own time, right, this is where you might come in and fine-tune things before you start doing your final illustration. I usually end up starting to add my color with a really rough sketch. I very rarely do a super complete sketch. So that's just my personal preference. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of sketch a couple wavy little areas where I'm gonna add some plants. Maybe they'll just stay little grass things. Maybe there'll be flowers on here. I'm just going to be really rough about it. Some leaves. This is mostly just to make sure I'm happy with the placement of things. And I know everything looks floating. We don't have a ground. All right. Is everybody ready to move on to adding color? I'm going to assume that's a yes. I have no idea how many people are here still, so I can't see the number. All right. So this is our sketch layer. I like to alpha lock, so you can tap it and tap alpha lock, or you can 2-finger swipe to the right to undo and redo alpha lock. I also like to turn it to multiply, and that is just so I can see through it when I'm adding color underneath. I see somebody who's looking for some time, some little time to get caught up. Keep getting caught up, and I'll kind of talk about some other stuff too. Go ahead and add a layer and drag it down below. I usually start with multiple layers and I sketch on the top layer, but we need that sketch up high and just add a few layers. So while we're here, you don't have to do this if you're getting caught up on your sketch. In the potpourri set, there's a few canvas brushes, and I'm going to show you how to do the canvas textures so that you can try to play around with these later. So if you want, let's say I like this pulpy paper. Let's do pulpy paper. Tap on one of the brushes, figure out what size you want. You can see the scale changing a little bit. And I like to start with a medium gray, like straight across when I'm using this disc view. Sometimes you might need a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, depending on the brush. And then I'm on a fresh layer, and I'm going to cover the whole thing in one stroke. Excuse me, I haven't talked at all yet today. And I'm going to duplicate that. So turn one blend mode to multiply. And that's going to apply to all our very light colors, but also turn the opacity down because it's going to be a very gray look too. And turn the other blend mode to color burn. And that will not show up on white or very light colors. And we can't really see if the opacity needs to be adjusted until we start getting some color down. And then I'm going to swipe right on both of those and group them. So now I have these texture layers above everything else. And I'll just show you really quick while people are getting caught up. Let's see. Oh, I need to find the palette that I was using for this. So I'll show you, let's see, I'm going to pick this purple. So you can see that texture. And you can kind of see it on the white too. You probably can't see it on the screen so well. So you can play around with the opacity of those texture layers at the end. All right, so the way that I like to start my illustration is to figure out what tone the background is going to be. How light or dark is that going to be? Because it really influences all the other colors that you choose. And I've been liking to do sort of underpaintings lately. So I'm going to tap on the background and pick a blue. So even though you don't have my palette here, I'm going to show you, you'll be able to see here what colors I'm using. So I'm choosing this kind of right in this really beautiful tealish blue, and I'm going really light with it. All right, this part is going to get mostly covered up, so don't worry too much about that blue. You can kind of maybe move it a little bit more towards blue. All right, so that's my background, but then I'm going to the very bottom layer and I'm going to add white. So you can double tap up here to get white. And then I like using, if you scroll down to this crayons and pastels, this soft pastel and blender at a really big size. And I'm just sort of letting some of the blue shine through. The snail is going to be very much filled in, so I'm not worried about covering the blue around the snail. Maybe you want to come back and make this look like it has an actual ground, green grass, clouds, blue sky. But for now, this almost doesn't feel like it was true white. Let me see. Yeah, it's white. For now, let's just add some brightness around our snail, letting some of that blue shine through. All right, so that's just how I get started. And on the layer above that, I'm going to go ahead and fill in my snail shell solid. Now, I like texture, so I am going to make sure that the edges have texture. I also want to make sure I turn down the opacity of my sketch so that I'm really seeing what I'm putting on the screen. I'm not seeing the edges from my lines there. So just if you can barely see it, then it's perfect. I'm choosing this dark purple so you can see where I'm at here over between purple and red, and I'm pretty dark. You do not have to choose the colors I choose. Let's see, I'm gonna just kind of fill in the middle here. And then as I get closer to the edge, I can think about what other brush I might want to use to give me a nice texture along the edge. I think this one's a little too fuzzy looking for the edge. So I might come back up to maybe the giant pencil or the soft pencil. On a smaller size, the soft pencil would have a nice textured edge without being super wide and fuzzy. So I'm filling in, and we're going to be using clipping masks. And if you want to fill this in by hand coloring it like this, so that you have a lot of stroke marks, the clipping masks will reflect that as well. But for the sake of this lesson, especially if you're new to Procreate, you could even just use a monoline brush, outline the whole thing, drag and drop color in. Be sure to ask questions if you have any. All right, it's a pretty color. This is mostly going to get hidden as well, so. Okay, on a layer under that, so I'm going down to my white layer and adding a layer. I'm going to make the whole snail part. So I have this sort of peachy color. You can see here it is in the orangey red salmon. And then I'm going to brighten it a little. This is just a base color, and we're going to be changing it by adding stuff on top of it. You could, can make it any color you want for snails. There's all sorts of sort of yellowy colors. And again, filling in, so you're on a layer under your snail, which means you can go right under that shell and it doesn't show. Fill in your whole entire snail shape, not the shell, but this fleshy part here. I might make my little antenna a little bit smaller, narrower. This is where it can be handy to have a very precise sketch before you start adding color, so that you don't really need to think along the way other than your color and texture choices. And I'm just going to go ahead and color the whole thing this color, even though we're turning it green over here. My wavy snail foot there. I'm on the wide pencil, I think. Yeah, wide pencil. Giant pencil works really great as well. It's just, it doesn't give solid coverage. So while you're coloring, I'll show you what I mean. So it looks like it's great coverage, but then if you go over it again, you can see how it gets darker. So that is ideal for some circumstances and not really for others. So for a base layer, I really like a solid, textured but solid, not transparent layer. All right, let's go ahead and keep working on this part of our cute snail and add a layer and turn it into a clipping mask. So add a layer above it, tap on it, and tap clipping mask. And what that means is whatever you do only shows up on top of that snail, specifically that part of the snail. So that means it's easy to stay in the lines. I'm going to choose a green, so I'm kind of in a yellowish green near the center, not super saturated. You can change it a little. And I'm still on the wide pencil, and I'm just going to see how I can just color right over and be out of the lines. Up here, I am going to just kind of let it flow off into the peach color there. And because it's a clipping mask, I'm going to tap and hold the eraser here. And that way I have the same, oh, I was still on giant pencil. That's way I have the same brush for my eraser. I need to move back to the wide pencil. So it just kind of fades in there, and I could erase it with that same texture. Oh, I think this is going to be a brighter snail than the ones I've already done. So the goal here for this little curve part is just to transition from this top part of the snail to this foot of the snail down here, the underside. So just a little curve there and a little bit of this like 45-degree angle here to make it look like it's just at an angle to the viewer as well. Thank you for answering that question. Yeah, I had switched to the giant pencil to show you an example, and then I forgot to switch back. But wide soft pencil gets really big and is a great pencil as well at a smaller size. It's one of my older brushes. All right, so that's the base colors for our snail, and now we just need to start adding the details. So let's stick with our snail part. If you want to add another clipping mask, you can go ahead and add another clipping mask to add some details on this green part, or you can just stay on this same layer. I'm going to stay on the same layer, and I'm going to go a little darker and a little more towards blue, because that's what I do for shadows. Let's go a little darker, more towards blue. And then I'm going to test it here. It's still pretty saturated, so I'm going to go a little bit more towards the black so it's less saturated. And just get a dark sort of area where that shell might be shadowing the body there. Kind of blend it out a little. You can start adding some lines at this point. I think one of mine had some cute little lines. Again, I'm on the same layer because I like to use fewer layers. I feel like it gives a less digital look. You could do lines. You can go to a lighter color, maybe more yellow and lighter, and do some spots. I want you to see something here. If you can see this texture right here in the middle, you can see the blue coming through. So that's the nice thing about clipping masks. So if I turn the green off, you can see that that texture is on this pink layer. So any texture that you desire to have, if you want that kind of texture to show through, then using clipping masks on top is a great way to kind of maintain that texture. If it's not something you want, then all you need to do is go back to the base layer, maybe find that color we used, and fill it in. And you're going to see it looking green as I fill it in. But what I'm really doing is filling in on the pink layer right here. And because I'm filling in that texture on the base layer, the green layer is also, it's it's exposing the green that's already on that layer, but that green is only showing up where there's pixels on that pink layer. So if there's no pixels here and there, then that green doesn't have pixels showing up either. So there's also some more texture down here that I might come back and alter later. So some of the details that we can get into, or you can get into off camera on your own time, is kind of cleaning up these edges a little bit to make them how you want them. If you want them more crisp or wavy or whatever you want. So you would do that on the base layer and that would fix the whole thing. So you can spend more time adding some more lines and dots to the green part. Maybe come back in and add even more shadow under here. We'll have to see how it looks after the color is added to the shell. And I think I want to add more texture over here to this part, but I don't want that texture to go over onto the green. So I'm tapping on this pink layer and adding another layer. Because I already have a clipping mask above it, it's going to automatically become a clipping mask. So you can see that by just tapping. Whoops, I did it twice. You can see that when you add a layer, it's automatically a clipping mask because it's sandwiched between one. So now I can add texture. I'll just use a bright color to show you. I can add stuff on just this pink part and it's not going to show up on the green. If you wanted to add something to show up on both, then you can add that layer above the green and turn it into a clipping mask. So if I select that color again and think about maybe a more towards purple, a little darker, think about what sort of texture you want. Come back down maybe to this streaky pastel. Get some shadowing down here. Maybe a lighter color for up here. Maybe streaky is not necessarily the brush I want up there. I'm going to tap and hold the smudge tool so that I'm still on that streaky brush, and I can just kind of smudge some of that out a little bit. I don't like smudging till things are super smooth. I'm also going to turn off my texture layers for now because it does affect the color choices when you do your color picking. So you can come through on a clipping mask and add some shadows and highlights and our little face. So let's move on to the little face. I might add another layer. It could be above the green or right where we were, right? So this is the layer with the shadows. Now I'm on a layer above it, but I'm below the green. Doesn't matter if I'm below the green because the green's way over here. So we're not going to interfere with the green at all. I'm going to pick black. And I'm going to go back up to, let's just pick a pencil. I'm going to go with soft pencil and go to a really small size. And I'm going to make black eyes that we're also going to add some. Ooh, we're going to add some layers to this, some dimension. But I'm seeing my black isn't showing because of the texture, because it's a clipping mask, and the texture that's exposed on that pink layer. So I'm going to go to the pink layer, go down to it, and I'm going to fill in right there. I'm just going to fill in this kind of textury area where I want the color to be coming through fully. All right, so now my black eyes show. On that same layer, you can go to a new layer. I'm going to go to gray and a pretty small size. And I'm just sort of making a little cute little reflection. It could be considered an iris. So I kind of went round and round. It got heavier with the pressure I was adding, but I'm focusing on a kind of a top area and a bottom area. So it looks like it has a giant pupil in there, but just a little bit of highlight in there. And then go to white and you can add a true highlight. It's not looking super white right now because my sketch layer is on, so it's in the way. It's showing through as gray a little bit. All right, and let's do that mouth. You can use black. I was gonna kind of stick with a dark brown, sort of like a dark version of this color. And I'm making it a bit thick. And then I'm adding a little shadow over here in the corners. So I just went to black, just did a little dark in the corners. And a little lighter right in the middle. So if you're getting caught up, black eyes with a dark gray sort of circle-y iris there, showing a big pupil with a white glimmer. And then I did a dark brown mouth with black in the corners and a little bit of a light line right there. And I'm going to do another step just to make them look like they're kind of sunken in a little bit, not just pasted on top. And that is to choose my snail color and go a little dark, a little more towards blue. And you can do this on a different layer, but I think it's simple enough that you can stick with this same layer. I did a smaller size, and I'm just doing a little ring around the eye. Just barely noticeable. I think sometimes we think we have to use a new layer for every little thing. And the way I started to think about it is, okay, if I goof up on this, I think that was simple enough that I can redo it if it was all on one layer. So I'm just going to keep it on one layer. And I'm doing the same thing here, just on the upper lip. So I'm doing a little bit of a shadow right here. Actually, let's go ahead and do it on the bottom lip too. Not that there's lips, but it's going to look a little bit sunken in this way. And then we're going to choose the color of our snail and go lighter, just a smidge, and towards yellow. And do below that little dark area that we just did, do a little tiny bit of a highlight on the underside of the mouth and the underside of the eyes. Barely noticeable. I'm going to turn the sketch off so we can see what that looks like. That's a lot of texture. That's how I like to do things. I'm going to tap and hold the eraser to get my wide. I have a little too much right there. That's a lot of texture. That brush has a lot of texture. This whole snail seems to have a lot of texture because of just how we're going about it. That's not everybody's style. Ugh, and I hate the word style. It's not everybody's preference. Let's just put it that way. So you could be making everything with the monoline brush at this point, and, you know, other very solid brushes. But isn't that so cute? All right. We are going to come back to, at the very end, there's something that I like to do with most illustrations at the very end, which is go through and add more highlights and shadows. So it is not finished, but it also is, because it's a live lesson. I can't do a 100% completed illustration with you in a reasonable amount of time, because I mean, these things take time. So just by getting going on all of these steps, and even just if you have to leave some half finished for now, hopefully you can remember what to do when you come back to finish. And if not, this recording will be here. All right, let's do this fun, colorful shell. And like I said, we're probably only going to do part of it, and we still need to add a shadow down here underneath our snail too. So we're going to our dark solid shell layer and go to a layer above that, and let's turn it into a clipping mask. I am going to make this the multiply blend mode, so I'm going to tap the N and move this to multiply. And I need my sketch back on. I can select that color, and because that layer is on multiply, it's going to look darker now. Let's go ahead and switch to the giant pencil. Doesn't matter though. You can do any pencil you want. I am going to add a line for the spiral. I am not going to make this a solid, even line all the way around. And later it's going to be very hidden anyways. I just want to have some of it showing underneath all the color we're about to add. I'm going to go ahead and come around this guy too, this little end piece here. I can already tell I want more shadow under here. So our guidelines for our curves here, this is where this comes in handy. And it's just so you can draw yours more easily. You don't need to trace right on top of them. It's just so you remember what the curves are doing. So I'm going to do some, it switched colors on me. I'm going to do some that go all the way across, and some that are just partially, like that. And I'm not doing too many, and I can always come back and add more. Remember, this is going to be the super duper colorful part. So some of these, you can try to manage adding all the colors around these so that all of these lines still show. I'm going to turn my sketch off, and I'm going to go to a layer above that and turn it into a clipping mask as well. And this is our fun, colorful part. I feel like my iPad is dim. There we go. I've been using the streaky brush for this. So the streaky pastel. This one's another fun one, but this one is not one that gets whiter with pressure. You can use whatever brush you want, a texture that you like, or no texture at all. I'm going to stick with the streaky pastel. Here's some of my color choices. If you want to try to add to a palette, we're back to this really pretty blue that's kind of right in this teal spot, that sweet spot right between blue and green. Pretty bright up here. And this part is really all about just kind of blobbing and having fun. So I'm just kind of adding as I, go back and forth between different colors, and I'm following that curve, maybe getting smaller as I come down to these smaller parts. Keeping my dark areas that we just did, all these lines, maybe keeping those exposed. If you really want to make sure they're not getting covered up, you could put this colorful layer under that line layer, but because that line layer is on multiply, it is going to be obvious if you go under. So if you end up using this blue underneath that, the multiply layer is now kind of showing this as a dark blue right here. So you still kind of need to work around those lines instead of just pretend like they're not there. I have been going through with a lot of bright colors first, and then white last. The bright yellow too. So if you want to look at my colors again, orange, I'm really right at kind of orangey red, but more just kind of solid orange. My yellow is sort of a goldenrod yellow, really bright, really saturated. But yeah, just pick any colors that your eye is attracted to. So this part is the part where you are going to finish this after this lesson. So just be aware of these smaller parts in here. Get a smaller brush going. But I'll show you a few colors so you can just kind of see how I've just been kind of overlapping some. This one's really a textured brush. It's not everybody's preference. I keep some of this base color showing, and then I also choose white at the end and make some nice bright spots here and there. So while you're doing that, I'll show you one of the finished ones. So here's one finished one, so you can see how, oh, I didn't finish it. I didn't finish that one, hold on. There's a finished one. So you can see there, I didn't leave very much of that base color showing. Oh, I forgot cheeks. Rosy cheeks on our guy here. All right. I know this is a fun part. Erin's saying, I might add this snail to my garden spring kitty. We did a really cute cat lesson in my membership recently. This one. It's been fun doing a lot of flower things lately. Good idea. Although, do cats eat snails? I don't know. I have chickens. They definitely eat snails. Okay. I know it's hard to move on from that when it's incomplete, but we're going to move on from that. We are going to do some more shadows and highlights on that later, but let's move on because it's already been almost an hour. Also, I wanted to show you adding cheeks to your little guy here. And as I'm looking at this, I think it would be even cuter if his eyes were further apart. And this is another reason why it's kind of nice that I did those eyes on the same layer. All those little colors in the eye are all on one layer, because now I can just grab that one layer. I can grab an eye and I can kind of move it, you know, way more easily than if it was a lot of layers. But for the pink cheeks, I want to go down a layer. I'm going to go ahead and go on this layer where I added this kind of weird highlight up here and this shadow down here. But you could add yet another layer. And I'm going to pick a pink that's in my illustration. Let's do this really bright pink and see how it goes. Let's do soft grit and just a small size and really light. And because it's a clipping mask, you can go out of the lines. It's only going to show up right there on its little cheek. Cute. I might smudge that later. It's a little speckly, but that's cute. I like that. All right. Let's make him look like he's not flying in a cloud. Let's put some shadow underneath him. So for that, I'm going to go to my white layer, this white layer we did on the blue, and I'm going to add a layer. And let's go ahead and turn that to a multiply layer. I don't know how it's going to really make much of a difference with the mostly white we have under here, but I like doing multiply for shadows. And I've been using these two purples for shadows. Let's go ahead and grab this medium purple here. And let's do our giant pencil on the biggest size. Go ahead and max it. And I'm just lightly putting some shadowness down here. That snail shell would be causing a shadow. I don't know. We can just kind of, for the lighter part, we can kind of make it however we want. And you can come in and smudge that with many different brushes. Try not to smudge too much texture out of it. And then come back and go to a darker, bluer purple. So on a smaller size, try to get some pretty dark areas right under the snail. That's going to really ground your snail. And also right here. Already makes such a big difference just having that dark area right there. And we're going to make it even darker with our highlights and shadows that we add later. That can kind of come out a little bit, but the darkest part really needs to be right in here. And you can play around with more shadow. Maybe another layer if you're worried about smudging too much. Maybe this lighter purple on a bigger, like this soft pastel blender brush. Get some more shadow under there. Just make sure you keep this darker line. Maybe even make it even darker. All right, I am going to tap on my base of my snail and swipe right on all of my snail layers. So I've got all of them highlighted, and I'm going to tap group and tap the little arrow, and that just has, it doesn't have the shadow, but it has all of my snail there on a separate layer. If you think you want your flowers to overlap in front of your snail, you can go to a layer above your snail, so you can get leaves to come in front. If you want your flowers to all look like they're sort of behind him, go to layers under your snail. I'm going above the snail. I don't know if anything's going to overlap, but I think it'll be okay going above the snail. And I'm just going to pick a darker green, so I'm kind of in a yellowy green, pretty dark. And how about pastel pencil? On a pretty small size. I'm going to bring my sketch back so I can see where I wanted all of my flowers. And I'm just going to start with one color. And I think because of time, I'm just going to show you this one big one. You can go ahead and do all of these on your own time. So I'm just gonna, whatever brush you want, whatever you like the look of. This one has sort of a pressure sensitivity, but also is kind of softer on one side and harder on one side, has a harder edge. I'm gonna go ahead and add my leaves to this same layer. I sketched in some leaves, but that was not my final leaf shape that I was thinking about, so just kind of filling in. I like a sketchy look. I used to not. And I decided I really liked texture. And then you can go towards yellow a little bit and a little lighter, and you can come in and add some just variety. Not sure I like that green that I chose, but you would want to just come back in later, add veins, add a little lighter green, darker green. I like to add a base color, a highlight, and a shadow, or not highlight and shadow, but like a lighter and a darker. So I can come back to my other green and go a little greener and darker, and come back in, get some other colors in there. And these are going to be so small that it just really doesn't matter that they don't look like a, you know, a leaf with veins necessarily, right? I am going to a new layer for the flower. If you don't have a lot of overlapping going on with your other layers or the other flowers and stems that you want to add, you can add all your stems on one layer, all your flowers on a different layer. I like to do different layers if I'm doing overlapping. And I'm going to pick this orange, so it's kind of a salmon-y color between red and orange, and pretty bright. And I'm just going to do sort of a center dot here, and make some petals. And this is going to look so simple, and then it'll look really fun in the end once we add some more details. And you could really be using any brush for this. So for those details, I might go a little redder, darker, maybe add some lines. Maybe really bright yellow for a center, which you could also do, that's not very yellow at all. You could also do on a separate layer, but because it's such a basic flower, I think it's simple to just put it on the same layer. Maybe white for some kind of little lines in there, little stamen. And I am going to also just go ahead and choose yellow for a little bit of highlight on each petal and do a little squiggle. I have a class called Folk. I never remember the names of my classes. Folksy birds and fantasy florals, where we just, you know, make up flowers in our heads like that. Who knows if that's a real flower? And then you think about, okay, if this one is on the same stem, although in the fantasy florals, it doesn't matter if it's on the same stem, it can be a totally different flower. But in here, you know, if you want like a bud, maybe this one's not open yet, you can have it something that's just pointing up like this. Maybe that darker color still has some lines down here. Maybe you still have some highlights up here. We're not worrying about all the details. So while you're doing yours, I'm going to show you this one. Just some simple squiggles. Squiggle, squiggle. And look how cute it is when you zoom out. Super cute. This one I just did blues. More blues. Some just little pink dots on here for little teeny tiny pink flowers. Here I did a little bit more of a sketchy job down here on the shadow, and you can see how dark I went down in here. If you want to draw your snail eating something, I just made it curve so it looks like he's chomping it and it's no longer like a nice smooth straight stem. And I darkened the stem here and here. That's it. What I like to do for highlights and shadows over the whole thing, you can do this as clipping masks over various layers if you want, but I like doing it just like on a layer on top of everything. No clipping mask. So here I am adding a layer above everything. You can group your flower layers, flowers and leaves, however many you end up with, so that you have your flowers on one group and your snail on one group. I'm on a layer above everything. I'm going to turn my sketch off. And this time I'm using an overlay blend mode. So go down to get to overlay. And overlay is nice. There's a lot of options. Experiment with blend modes for highlights and shadows. Overlay is nice to do both, highlights and shadows. So multiply only does darker things, but that also works. And let's just see what this does. And what I do is, I'll show you, double tap in the white area, and on a big brush, I'm just going to do a streak across. So you can see white really brightens. It does brighten things in different ways, different colors in different ways. So you can see this is a super fluorescent pink, and this is very, very white. If you go to black, this is a really bright orange. This is a super dark, 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 dark green. If you go right to the middle of the gray, watch what I'm doing. You can't see it, right? So that 50% gray is your invisible color. Anything above that is going to make it a little lighter. Anything below that is going to make it a little darker. So if you don't want it super bright, then don't go to white, go to a light gray. And then you have it, it's hard to tell on the screen, maybe a slightly darker gray. If you don't want it super dark, go to a dark gray. Right there. You can also play with opacity, but because we're doing highlights and shadows on the same layer, the opacity is going to affect all of it, so you can't really fine-tune things unless you do multiple layers. Maybe you do one overlay layer with shadows, one overlay layer with highlights. So I think this is a great shadow color. So that's a pretty dark gray. Let's see what the value is. 34%. I'm going to tap clear on that layer. And this is where I'm going to come in with various brushes depending on the texture I want. I'll go with giant pencil for now. And I'm on a darker color, so I'm adding some shadows. So I can come in and, you know, shade under here a little bit more. Because I like a sketchy look, I'm using a sketchy pencil for this. I can shade under here a little bit more. I like to shade this shell a little bit around both sides of the dark line that we have, just to kind of make it look even more like it's going, you know, roundy like that. This, of course, takes a lot of time and I'm rushing. Maybe that's not the best brush to use for that. If you want to have more shadows under here on the foot of the snail. Now, this is where, because we're not on a clipping mask, it is, you know, something where you have to really pay attention to exactly where your lines are, because it's going to show up everywhere. Although it doesn't show up so well on white. Yeah, so you're going to come around, do some shadows and highlights. You can do a big highlight like this across the shell, maybe another one down here, maybe a little one on this little lip here, maybe some highlights on the head, thinking about, you know, if it's not really a sunny day, if you've got all this, kind of looks like clouds to me, but I don't know if I've been highlighting down here on top of this foot, but you could, I guess. Maybe smudge that a little. And now I'm trying to think of anything else I may have forgotten. I want to zoom in on this one to show you what I've done everywhere on the snail itself. So do you see the little streaks I have here and here and here, over here, even up here? On the shell, I have some sketchy lines around the whole outer part of the shell. Down here you can see it. That's just the look I was going for the edging of everything. I kind of did it on this one too. So when you want to change something like that, you just go to the base layer. So for the snail itself, you would go to this dark pink layer. You could choose that color, pick a pencil-y brush or whatever you want that edge to look like, and come in and just add or erase. You can do either. And you can see here where I just drew this extra line, the blue is showing up there now because that blue was on a clipping mask. So it's there. See if I turn that clipping mask off, you can see that blue is there. It's just not showing up until there's something on that layer underneath it that it's clipped to. So you can come around and really change, oops, what am I doing? Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Really change up the whole sort of finished look to however you like. I think I might even make this shadow darker in here. Are there any questions? Yes, this live is going to be on the YouTube channel after this is over. There's a live tab. There's several live recordings there. You're welcome, Amanda. Sorry we didn't get through the whole entire thing. All right. I can't tell how much of a delay there is, so I'm hoping that there's no questions since I don't see anything in the chat. And I think you've had enough time now to ask questions. All right. Thank you for being here. And I hope you like these brushes. I am over on Substack as my social media. So if you want to email me and show me what you made, or post over there, I don't know how you post. I guess you can post to notes over there, is what it's called, and tag me, I guess. And it's very different. I have Blue Sky, but I rarely check it, and I'm not on Meta anymore. And I think there's some of your names that I'm not recognizing because it's like a YouTube handle, but I think some of you know me. Thank you, Gabby. All right, everybody. See you later. Oh, I'm glad, Gabby. Gabby saying it was great to start to be creative again. Yeah, I think there's many of us who are having some rough times right now. Several of us in my membership are having some big health issues with our husbands. And I think art is definitely one of those things that is helpful. Even for me, it's more about just getting my mind off of things. So, all right. Bye, everybody.